They say everyone has a price, and mine was $5,000. I thought I was just a private driver for a billionaire CEO, earning enough to save my family from the streets. But when Evelyn Sterling handed me that NDA, she wasn't just buying my silence, she was buying my life. I drove that black Maybach for 7 nights, never realizing that the package in the trunk was my own father, the man who had been dead for 14 years. Stay tuned, because this isn't just a story about a job, it's a 30-minute descent into a conspiracy that started with a signature and ended in a race for survival. Watch until the very end, because the truth behind Project Nightingale is more terrifying than you can imagine. My name is Leo, and until last week, I was just another 24-year-old trying to survive in a city that didn't care if I lived or died. My rent was 2 months overdue, and my bank account was down to my last $50. I was desperate, and as they say, desperation leads you to dark places. I found the ad on a hidden section of a private job forum. It was simple: discreet personal driver needed for high-profile client. $500 per day. Professionalism and silence are mandatory. No company name, no interview location, just a burner phone number. When I called, a cold, robotic voice told me to be at the north gate of the Sterling estate at exactly 11 p.m. I didn't know then that stepping through those gates would be the biggest mistake of my life. The estate was massive, hidden behind iron gates and thick trees. I was led to a sleek, black 2024 Mercedes Maybach. The interior smelled like expensive leather and a perfume that felt suffocatingly sweet. That's when she stepped out of the shadows. Ms. Evelyn Sterling. She was wearing a tailored black coat and dark sunglasses, even though it was nearly midnight. She didn't look at me. She didn't even acknowledge my presence. She just stepped into the back seat and said one word in a voice that sent shivers down my spine: drive. As I pulled out of the driveway, I felt her eyes on the back of my head through the rearview mirror. We drove for 3 hours in total silence. No music, no GPS, just her giving me short, cold directions. Left. Right. Stop here. Wait. At the end of the night, she handed me 5 crisp $100 bills. Be here tomorrow, Leo. Don't be late, she said before vanishing back into her mansion. I should have walked away then. I should have realized that $500 a day for just driving was too good to be true. But I was greedy, and I needed the money. I had no idea that by the 7th night, I wouldn't just be a driver, I would be witnessing something that required a non-disclosure agreement just to keep me alive. The next 3 nights were a blur of expensive gas stations and long, quiet highways. Every night at exactly 11 p.m., Evelyn would step into the Maybach, always in black, always silent. My job was simple: drive where she pointed, park when she said, stop, and never, under any circumstances, look at her through the mirror. But on the 4th night, the silence was broken. We were parked near an old, rusted pier on the edge of the city. It was raining, a cold, relentless drizzle that made the streetlights look like blurry ghosts. Evelyn didn't get out of the car. Instead, she pulled out a phone, not her usual high-end smartphone, but an old, bulky burner phone. She started talking. Her voice was a low hiss, barely a whisper, but in the enclosed space of the car, I could hear every word. It's done, she said. The package is in the secondary location. Make sure he doesn't talk. If he does, you know what to do. My heart skipped a beat. Who was he? And what package was she talking about? I tried to keep my eyes on the road, but my curiosity was screaming. As she finished the call, she looked up and caught my eyes in the rearview mirror. For 5 long seconds, neither of us breathed. Her gaze was cold, sharp, and empty. "Leo," she whispered, her voice dangerously calm. "Do you know why I hired you instead of a professional security firm?" I shook my head, my hands tightening on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Because professionals have records. Professionals talk to their superiors. But you're a nobody. And nobodies are easy to make disappear. She then reached forward and dropped something into the center console, a small, encrypted USB drive. "If anything happens to me tonight, you take this to the address I'm about to give you. Do not open it. Do not look at it. If you do, $500 a day will be the least of your worries." I drove her to a derelict warehouse district I had never seen before. 3 men in suits were waiting by a silver SUV. They didn't look like businessmen, they looked like hunters. Evelyn stepped out, taking her burner phone but leaving the USB drive right there, next to me. As I watched her walk away into the shadows, I realized I wasn't just a driver anymore. I was holding a secret that people probably killed for. Evelyn was gone. The car felt empty, but the air was thick with the smell of her expensive perfume and the cold rain outside. My hand was trembling as it hovered over the center console, where the small USB drive lay like a ticking bomb. "Do not open it," she had said. But the silence in that dark warehouse district was deafening, and my curiosity was a fire that wouldn't go out. I reached for my laptop, which I always kept in the passenger seat for my breaks. I told myself I was just checking if the drive was corrupted. I told myself I was doing it for my own safety. With a shaky breath, I plugged it in. The screen flickered to life, casting a ghostly blue glow on my face. There was only one folder, titled Project Midnight. Inside were dozens of audio recordings and photos. I clicked on the most recent one. The sound was grainy, filled with static. But then, I heard it. A man's voice, pleading. "Please, Evelyn, I have a family." I didn't mean to see what was in the vault. Then came her voice, cold, mechanical, and devoid of any mercy. "The vault was never for you to see, David. Now, you're just a loose end that needs to be tied. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just corporate secrets. This was a recording of a kidnapping, or worse. I quickly opened the photo folder. My heart nearly stopped. There were photos of me driving the car, entering the Sterling estate. Even a photo of me at my local coffee shop from 3 days ago. She hadn't just hired me, she had been stalking me before I even knew the job existed. I was never just a nobody. I was a pawn in a game I didn't understand. Suddenly, a loud thud hit the trunk of the car. The Maybach rocked on its suspension. Someone, or something, was inside that trunk, and it was alive. I looked at the rearview mirror and saw Evelyn walking back toward the car, but she wasn't alone. The 3 men from the SUV were right behind her, and one of them was holding a silenced pistol. I had 10 seconds to decide, do I drive away and become a fugitive, or do I sit here and wait for the NDA that would silence me forever? Evelyn was only 10 feet away when she saw the blue light of my laptop screen through the window. Her expression didn't change, but she raised her hand and pointed directly at me. That was the signal. One of the men in suits started running toward the driver's side, pulling something from his waistband. Adrenaline hit me like a lightning bolt. I didn't think, I just acted. I slammed the Maybach into reverse, the tires screaming against the wet pavement. The man lunged for the door handle, but I was already moving. I threw the car into drive and floored it, fishtailing out of the alleyway just as a dull thud hit my side mirror. They were shooting at me. But the nightmare wasn't behind me. As I tore through the deserted streets of the warehouse district, I saw two sets of headlights flip on in my rearview mirror. The silver SUV was coming, and it was fast. Every time I turned a corner, they were right there, like shadows that wouldn't let go. Suddenly, a voice came from the back seat. It wasn't Evelyn. It was a muffled, desperate scream. "Help me. Please." My heart nearly stopped. The trunk wasn't just rocking because of the car's movement, there was someone locked in the hidden compartment behind the rear seats. Evelyn hadn't been delivering packages, she had been delivering people. I was trapped between a kidnapped victim in my car and a team of professional killers behind me. I had the USB drive, the recording, and the evidence, but if I didn't make it out of this chase alive, none of it would matter. I headed straight for the city bridge, hoping the traffic or a police patrol would save me, but the SUV rammed into my back bumper, sending the car spinning toward the edge of the river. The men in suits were just 5 feet away when I finally found the emergency trunk release button hidden deep under the dashboard. Click. I heard the trunk pop open. For a split second, the men stopped, confused by the sudden movement. That was my only chance. I slammed the car into reverse, the tires screaming as they fought for grip on the wet asphalt. One of the men lunged for the driver's side door, his silenced pistol aimed directly at my head. I ducked just as a bullet shattered the side window, spraying glass across my face and shoulders. I didn't feel the pain, the adrenaline was the only thing keeping me alive. I swung the steering wheel hard, hitting the man with the rear of the car and sending him flying into a stack of wooden crates. I tore out of the warehouse district, the Maybach's engine roaring like a trapped beast. But as I reached the main road, 2 sets of high-beam headlights flickered on behind me. They were following. And they were fast. I looked at the second phone I had found, the one with the cracked screen. It was vibrating again. A new message appeared: "We have your mother, Leo. Stop the car now or she's next." My heart stopped. This wasn't just about a package or an NDA anymore. They had been planning this for years. Every move I made, every job I took, it was all leading to this night. I looked at the USB drive plugged into my laptop. The data was still decrypting, but a name flashed on the screen that I hadn't seen in a decade: Project Nightingale. Suddenly, a muffled groan came from the backseat area. The trunk wasn't just open, the person inside was trying to crawl through the small opening behind the armrest. A hand, pale and trembling, reached through and grabbed my shoulder. I almost crashed into a streetlight in pure terror. "Leo, stop, it's me," a familiar voice whispered. It was a voice I hadn't heard since I was 10 years old. It was my father. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw his face, older, scarred, but unmistakably him. He wasn't dead. He hadn't abandoned us. He had been Evelyn Sterling's prisoner for 14 years. And now, I was driving the very car that was supposed to take him to his execution. The SUV behind me rammed into my bumper again, hard. The Maybach fishtailed, and for a second, I thought we were going to flip. I had to make a choice: drive to the police and risk them killing my mother, or follow the GPS coordinates that just popped up on the cracked phone, a location titled "The Final Exchange." I was driving at 90 miles per hour through the rain-soaked industrial district, my father's breath heavy and ragged in the back seat. My mind was a battlefield. One side told me to go to the police, but the cracked phone on the console was a constant reminder that Evelyn Sterling had my mother. She was always 3 steps ahead. "Leo, you shouldn't have come for me," my father whispered, his voice cracking like dry parchment. I looked at him in the mirror. He looked like a ghost of the man I remembered. "They didn't just want me for what I knew, Leo. They wanted the key. The one I hid in your old toy box 14 years ago. My blood ran cold. The Project Nightingale folder on the USB drive, it wasn't just data. It was a blueprint for a surveillance system that could track anyone, anywhere, at any time. My father had built it for Evelyn's father, but when he realized what they were going to do with it, he tried to destroy it. That's why he was taken. Suddenly, the SUV behind me didn't just ram the bumper, they fired. A bullet shattered the rear windshield, sending shards of glass onto my father's lap. I ducked instinctively, the car swerving dangerously close to a row of parked shipping containers. I had to lose them. I had to find a way to save my mother and keep my father alive. I saw an old, half-collapsed parking garage up ahead. It was dark, crumbling, and exactly the kind of place where I could disappear for a moment. I pulled a sharp U-turn, the tires smoking, and vanished into the shadows of the concrete structure. I turned off the headlights and sat there in total silence, the only sound being the rain hitting the roof and my own frantic breathing. The cracked phone buzzed again. It was a video call. I hesitated, then swiped to answer. The screen was dark for a second, then a light flickered on. I saw my mother tied to a chair in a room that looked like a basement. Evelyn Sterling stepped into the frame, her face as calm and beautiful as a porcelain mask. "Leo, you're a very talented driver. But you're a terrible son," she said, her voice smooth like silk over a blade. "You have the USB. You have your father. And I have the only person left who loves you. Bring them to the old lighthouse at 4 a.m. If I see a single police siren, she dies. If you try to run, she dies." She ended the call, leaving me in the pitch-black darkness of the garage. I looked at my father. He was holding something, a small, silver locket he had pulled from around his neck. "Leo, this isn't a locket. It's a transmitter. It's the only reason Evelyn hasn't killed me yet. If you open it, every dirty secret of the Sterling family will be broadcast to every news station in the country. I held the silver piece in my hand. This was the NDA she really wanted. Not a contract, but this locket. I had 3 hours. 3 hours to decide if I should save my family or expose the most powerful woman in the city. But then, I heard the sound of a car engine echoing through the garage. They had found us. The engine of the Maybach hummed like a trapped predator as I sat in the pitch-black shadows of the parking garage. Outside, the rain had turned into a full-blown storm, the thunder shaking the concrete pillars around me. I looked at the silver locket in my palm, it felt heavier than 1,000 pounds. My father was slumped in the back, his eyes half closed, his strength fading fast. "Leo, you can't go to the lighthouse," he gasped, his voice barely a rattle. "It's not an exchange. It's a funeral. Evelyn doesn't leave witnesses. She never has." I knew he was right. The Sterling family didn't get this powerful by playing fair. They got here by erasing anyone who stood in their way. But I had no choice. My mother's face on that cracked screen was etched into my brain. I shifted the car into drive and slowly rolled out of the garage. I didn't turn on the lights. I drove by the faint glow of the city's distant neon signs, weaving through side alleys to avoid the SUV I knew was still hunting us. As I drove toward the coast, the city lights faded, replaced by the jagged silhouettes of the jagged cliffs and the roaring Atlantic Ocean. At the edge of the world sat the old Blackwood lighthouse. Its beam was dead, its tower crumbling, a perfect place for a crime that would never be solved. I pulled up to the base of the cliff. 3 black SUVs were already there, their headlights cutting through the mist like shark eyes. Standing in the center, sheltered by a large black umbrella held by one of her guards, was Evelyn Sterling. She looked like a queen surveying her kingdom of shadows. I stepped out of the car, the wind nearly knocking me over. I held the silver locket high in my hand. "I have it, Evelyn. And I have my father," I shouted over the roar of the waves. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Step forward, Leo. Let's see if you're as brave as your father was before he broke. As I walked toward her, my father suddenly grabbed my arm from the open car door. "Leo, wait, the locket, look at the back." I glanced down. On the back of the silver piece was a tiny, microscopic engraving, property of the U.S. Department of Justice. My father hadn't just built a surveillance system, he had been an undercover asset for the government this whole time. Suddenly, a red laser dot appeared on my chest. Then another on my father's head. Evelyn's guards had their rifles aimed. "The locket, Leo. Now. Or your mother becomes a memory," she commanded, her voice cold as ice. I was 10 feet away from her. The waves were crashing against the rocks below. I had the key to her destruction, but she had the trigger to my world. I looked at Evelyn, then at the locket, and then I did the one thing she didn't expect. I didn't hand it over. I didn't run. I threw the locket as hard as I could, not at her, but toward the ocean. "If you want it, go get it," I yelled. The silver locket caught a flash of lightning as it arched through the air, disappearing into the churning black abyss of the Atlantic Ocean. For 3 seconds, the only sound was the wind howling through the lighthouse's iron railings. Evelyn Sterling stood frozen, her calm mask finally shattering. Her eyes weren't cold anymore, they were burning with a primitive, lethal rage. You arrogant little brat," she hissed, her voice trembling. She signaled to her guards, and the red laser dots on my chest began to dance. I closed my eyes, waiting for the impact. But instead of a gunshot, I heard a loud, mechanical beep coming from the Maybach behind me. I looked back. My father was leaning out of the car, holding the second cracked phone I had found. "Evelyn. The locket Leo just threw was a decoy," he shouted, his voice stronger than before. "The real transmitter is already broadcasting. Look at your own tablet." Evelyn's lead guard pulled out a rugged tablet. His face went pale. "Ma'am, every server in Sterling Global is being wiped. And the files, they're being uploaded directly to the DOJ and Interpol servers right now." I realized then what my father had done. The locket I threw was just a piece of silver. The real data was inside the encrypted USB I had plugged into my laptop, and by driving into this dead zone near the lighthouse, I had triggered an automatic upload via the car's high-gain satellite antenna. Evelyn screamed, a sound so raw and haunting it didn't sound human. "Kill them. Kill them all," she ordered. The guards raised their rifles, but suddenly, the sky above the lighthouse exploded into light. Not lightning, but the blinding white beams of searchlights. For blacked-out tactical helicopters descended from the storm clouds, the rotor wash kicking up a massive spray of seawater. A voice boomed from a megaphone, "Federal agents. Drop your weapons. You are surrounded." The guards hesitated. They were professionals, but they weren't paid enough to fight the U.S. government. One by one, they dropped their rifles and went to their knees. But Evelyn, she didn't move. She looked at me, a small, silver-plated pistol appearing in her hand from the folds of her coat. "If I'm going down, Leo, I'm taking your legacy with me," she whispered. She aimed not at me, but at the car where my father was sitting. My heart stopped. I lunged forward, trying to reach her, but the ground was slick with rain. Bang! The sound of the gunshot was swallowed by a massive crack of thunder. I fell to the ground, my ears ringing. I looked up, expecting to see my father gone, but instead, I saw Evelyn Sterling slumped against the lighthouse door. A single red hole was in her shoulder. She hadn't been killed, but she had been neutralized by a sniper from the helicopter. Evelyn Sterling was on the ground, her power stripped away in a single night. The federal agents swarmed the cliffside like a wave of black shadows, their boots thumping against the wet gravel. I ran to the Maybach, my heart throat high. My father was leaning against the seat, his face pale, but his eyes, for the first time in 14 years, were filled with a strange, quiet peace. "Leo, the basement," he choked out, pointing to the encrypted phone I was still clutching. "The GPS, it's not just a location. It's a live feed. Your mother, she's not at the lighthouse. I looked at the cracked screen. The coordinates had changed. Evelyn hadn't brought my mother here to the cliffs, she had kept her in the high-security bunker underneath the Sterling estate, the very place I had driven to every night for the past week. I had been feet away from her every single night and I didn't even know it. I didn't wait for the agents. I jumped back into the driver's seat of the Maybach. The windshield was shattered, the side panels were dented, but the engine, the heart of that beast, was still roaring. I turned the car around, the tires spitting gravel into the ocean, and floored it back toward the city. For the first time, I wasn't driving for a boss. I was driving for my family. As I reached the Sterling estate, the gates were already being smashed open by tactical vans. I drove through the chaos, straight to the private garage. I knew the secret entrance now. I remembered the Project Nightingale blueprints from the USB. It wasn't just a surveillance system, it was a map of every hidden room in this mansion. I ran down the cold, concrete stairs of the sub-basement. My lungs were burning. At the end of the hallway was a heavy steel door with a digital keypad. I pulled out the second phone, the cracked one. I remembered the code Evelyn had typed on the first night. 0-4-1-2, my birthday. The final sick joke of a woman who thought she owned my life. The door hissed open. Inside, sitting on a small wooden chair, was my mother. She looked up, her eyes wide with terror, then slowly, they filled with tears as she recognized the man standing in front of her. "Leo," she whispered. I didn't say a word. I just knelt down and held her as the world around us finally stopped spinning. 2 weeks later, the dust finally settled. The Sterling Empire was gone. Evelyn was facing a life sentence for human trafficking, kidnapping, and treason. My father was in a secure government hospital, slowly recovering from years of isolation. I'm sitting in my apartment now. It's quiet. No mysterious phone calls, no black Maybachs in the driveway. The government gave us a settlement for my father's years of service, enough to move far away and start over. But sometimes, when it rains, I look at my hands and I can still feel the vibration of that steering wheel. I learned one thing that week. An NDA is just a piece of paper. It can't hide the truth forever. And money? Money can buy you a luxury car, a mansion, and a fleet of guards, but it can't buy you a clear conscience. My name is Leo. I was a private driver for a week. And that week taught me that the most dangerous secrets aren't the ones we keep, they're the ones we're forced to drive for. This was my story. It's a reminder that sometimes, the job that seems too good to be true, is exactly that. What would you have done if you found your own father in the trunk? Let me know in the comments. This has been Reddit Nights. Sleep well, if you can.